We need extreme vetting for toxic masculinity. So says Sally Cohn, a CNN political commentator on CNN's website. So I'm going to do a bit of the article and critique it, but Cohn doesn't say what this extreme vetting should consist of. But I think that what we as a society need is extreme vetting within the media to make sure that women like her are ostracised, sidelined, and frankly, if this is all they can come up with, which to me is a kind of, it's hate speech for me. Anyway, it's going to be painful for you to listen to this, guys, because obviously I've been through the article, and usually the only bright things to be found in a CNN building anyway would be the studio lights. But despite the fact that they're continuously being derided as fake news by people like Mark Dice and Alex Jones, Paul Joseph Watson, and of course Donald Trump, who predictably, given this subject, gets a mention, CNN must be taken seriously. Even though this is a BS article, they have to be taken seriously because they're a powerful entity, and they have almost 2.5 million subscribers on YouTube alone. So let's have a look at the article. I'm going to try and make this as brief as possible. And in the editor's note, it mentions that the opinions expressed in this commentary are hers, Sally Cohn's. Well, you can't exactly dissociate yourself from them, CNN, or have a disclaimer against them, given that you're hosting it. Anyway, the downfall of Harvey Weinstein. Okay, so she mentions Weinstein, she mentions Louis C.K., Roy Moore, and Kevin Spacey. This is very predictable, of course. And she mentions that the director of a film starring Spacey, which was set for release next month, will now be completely redone, with the scenes where Spacey's going to be replaced with Christopher Plummer. So what? I mean, of course they're going to do that. They're trying to cut their losses and save a little money. Louis C.K. says his 5 accusers, mainly comedians or comedy writers, allegedly masturbated in front of or on the phone with women when they did not want him to, according to the New York Times. So, of course, that's such a reliable source. So fucking what would be my attitude towards that? If you found out that if you're a woman and you found out some guy was masturbating on the end of the phone, he was having a bit of a wank, I was talking to you, well, you could tell him to fuck off, you could laugh it off, or you could hang the phone up. How is this abuse, for fuck's sakes? And if you were talking to a woman on the phone and she just told you that she was masturbating at the time, would you even if you were discussing, you just hang the fucking phone up? Would you run off to the police or run to CNN or the Daily Mail? Now, the reason I mentioned the Daily Mail is because just yesterday they ran an article about a newsreader, Sian Williams, and she claimed that she had to get down on her knees in a tube station. I'm going hoarse on this article already, I'm getting so upset. She had to get on her knees to pick up a ticket in a tube station, and she claims that the guy behind her said, "That's how I like my women, on their knees." And this made it to not just, I was about to say national, to an internationally renowned fucking online rag, and they're lending this story credence, or like it matters. I looked for a list of the injured and the fatalities at the scene of this atrocity committed by toxic masculinity. I mean, what a fucking... Anyway, she goes on to say it's important to understand that the common denominator in the allegations and blah, blah, blah. She mentions the guys again, same guys, and all the other Hollywood and media and political figures accused, yes, accused being the operative word, of sexual assault. And sexual harassment isn't sexuality or even sex, but toxic masculinity. See how she wants to drum it into your head? She's going to talk about toxic femininity. There's a video here on YouTube of Tucker Carlson, and he's interviewing a woman about toxic masculinity, and you really need to watch this. What amazes me about that, this woman comes out with a statement, "Boys shouldn't be boys," and she's smirking throughout the entire thing. She's just a common bully. And what she relies on, it occurred to me whilst I was watching Carlton interviewing her, and he didn't do his usual bang-up job. He was questioning her, but nowhere near as thoroughly as I would have done. I would have asked her about violence committed against children by women, because they commit almost twice as much child abuse as men. I would have asked her about the sexual abuse of boys in juvenile facilities in the United States, which around 90% of it is committed by female staff, even though they're less than half of the staff members. I would have been asking about that. Yes, these women are just they're bullies. They're just disgusting. So I'm going to leave a link to this article in the comments section, which I'll pin to the top. I'll stick another couple of links there. One, which comes from a pretty reliable source, suggests that almost half of young men have been subjected to some kind of, I don't know, call it sexual harassment, I suppose, by women. Almost all of it by women. And I'm going to leave another one to Child Maltreatment 2015. This comes from the Department of Health and Human Services. And if you scroll down to pages 51 and 61, you'll see that the natural mother is responsible for almost twice as much abuse against children as the natural father, and she is also responsible for almost twice as much killing of her own children as the natural father. Children are far safer with their natural father than with their natural mother, as you'll see from the tables there. But do CNN and this Sally Cohn, do they pay any attention to this? Not as far as I'm aware. And even if they did, I would point out immediately that the overwhelming majority of women don't molest or beat or kill children. And it's the same with the overwhelming majority of men. Anyway, she continues. Writer Amanda Marcotte, never heard of her, defines toxic masculinity as a specific model of manhood geared towards dominance and control. It's a manhood that views women and LGBT, there you go, LGBT people as inferior. Really? Where is this toxic masculinity that you're talking about? We can see toxic feminism all over the place, which defines men in an appalling manner and treats men like absolute, almost like vermin. Now, it's just feminist projection. They are the ones who are virulent, and they are the ones spreading hatred. Anyway, continues, but it is most assuredly amplified in our culture. What culture was she's going to say? We see it everywhere. No, I don't. Well, I see it in the media. I see you talking about it, Cohn. I see it being repeated everywhere in the media. But you're the ones talking about it. But she's not talking in the same way I am. She's writing about what she describes as toxic masculinity. We see toxic masculinity not only in acts of sexual violence, but in pornography. Yeah, no such thing as femdom then, that celebrates male sexual violence, which I found out from Milo Yiannopoulos. Women are more likely to watch adult videos, which are sexually violent against women than men. And Milo is very rarely wrong with his facts. And she mentions mainstream films. The only mainstream film that I've ever seen that portrayed an act of sexual violence as a positive thing was it was a Clint Eastwood film, High Plains Drifter, and that depicted a rape as being a positive thing, and that's it. That's the only example I can think of from the 70s. And she mentions TV shows. Really? Where? She mentions no films, she mentions no TV shows. I would be amazed if she can think of one. And advertising, give me a fucking break. I got involved in MRA campaigning because of advertising. Advertising was what first made me notice what hypocrites feminists are and how they complain continuously, back in the 1990s in particular, about adverts portraying women, sexually objectifying women, but they had nothing whatsoever to say about the plethora of adverts depicting men as being continually outsmarted by their female counterparts. So she has the nerve to mention that, and she claims that advertising portrays male dominance as not only natural but sexy. Give me an example, Cohn. Give us a fucking example. We see it in our everyday lives. No, you do. In the cultural norms that, for example, tell men to be tough and boys not to cry and teach our children that aggression equals strength. Who's doing this teaching, Sally? No bloody examples. And she mentions the near daily revelations about public figures accused of sexual abuse, and in the stories from victims. Yes, accusations and victims, two different things. When someone's accused, that doesn't mean that the person accusing them is necessarily a victim. But she gives the impression that they're victims because they said so. That's rubbish. And in this moment, as we watch this damn break, it becomes even more plain that toxic masculinity lies at the root of sexual assault. What, you mean the sexual assault of the boys in juvenile facilities? Is that to do with toxic masculinity? No. And it's harming all of us. No, it isn't. That's all in your mind. Men and women in myriad ways. Bullshit. She goes on to say these cases don't just reflect the aberrant predilections of their perpetrators, but the enduring injustices of society that we have all propped up and tolerated. That we have all propped up and tolerated? What, you mean you, Sally? Do you mean CNN? I don't think so. Propped up and tolerated? What parts of society are propping up and tolerating this? Because politicians and the media at this moment in time, and for decades it seemed to me, have gone on and on and on and on about precious little other. As soon as you hear the word women, or men, you know exactly what's coming up. Domestic violence bullshit, sexual harassment, stalking, paedophilia, and anything else that they can think of to talk garbage about. Propped up and tolerated bullshit. Anyway, she goes on, men who are barely earning above minimum wage are sexually abusing employees who are barely scraping by. If these employees speak out, they may face repercussions from a male-dominated workplace leadership and may not be able to feed and shelter their families. Well, I would suggest that men, I've no doubt there are loads of women in the workplace scared of the possibility of being sexually harassed, but that's because the media are creating hysteria, like in this article, as far as I'm concerned, when you combine all the articles put together. But men, I can remember reading back as far as the 1990s, were bugging their own officers in the workplace, particularly in the United States, because they were terrified of being falsely accused of sexual harassment. Does CNN and Sally Cohn want to talk about false accusations? I'd be amazed. Or for that matter, if I wrote an article contradicting this and presented it to CNN, would it have a chance of being put on their website? I'd be amazed again. We must together open our eyes. Donald Trump, here you go, called for the expansion of extreme vetting for people entering the United States. That was to try and keep you safe from terrorism committed by certain people, which happens in Europe practically every other bloody day. Why aren't we extreme vetting men who are here? All I'm going to say to that is that's disgusting. It's just absolutely disgusting. Why aren't we talking about toxic masculinity, she asks. You are. What do you think you're writing right now, woman? Why aren't we as a society seriously scrutinising men and masculinity? Who the fuck does she think she is? Seriously scrutinising men and masculinity? What, you mean like half, you think that you have the right, Cone, to, well actually she does have the right, but she thinks that society should be examining the behaviour of what? Half the population of the human fucking race, who prior to feminism in the Western world used to be inextricably linked to the other half, but now we've been separated by people like this. And then she talks about the way we raise our children, treat our workers and form our policies, perpetuates behaviour we say we don't want. Really? What you mean like VAWA? The Violence Against Women Act of 1994, pushed through Congress by creepy Joe Biden? The Violence Against Women Act, it's the act of legislation that Biden claims he's most proud of. And God knows how many divorces have been initiated by women making false accusations of domestic violence using parts of VAWA. But she's talking about policies perpetuating behaviour we say we don't want. Well, CNN, like every other TV channel, has gone on and on over the years about domestic violence. So what does she talk? She She doesn't know what she's talking about. Anyway, pardon me for going off on that little tangent, a little break there while I got trying to get my head together. The answer, of course, is also the problem. There we go. It is because men wield disproportionate power and privilege. All right, I'm skipping down. I'm going to try and wrap this up. I would say, in fairness, that if you do look at the article and you skip down to the comments section, there are loads of comments ripping into this wretched woman and her commentary here. But anyway, I'll just finish off with some of the words. I don't mean here to attack men. Unbelievable. Or masculinity, for that matter. This whole fucking article is about so-called toxic masculinity. And she says that good men suffer under toxic masculinity too, from the strict roles and constricting norms they're expected to fulfill, to the violence in society that toxic masculinity perpetuates. All right, it's bullshit. The article's bullshit. She quotes some guy, Justin Baldoni, whoever the fuck he is, apparently he's an actor, who says that he believes that men are ready to redefine what it means to be a man today. Okay, so he, along with his feminist allies, believe that they're bigger than Mother Nature, they're bigger than millions of years of evolution, and that they can stand millions of years of evolution on its head and turn men from being men into, I don't know, what? And not expect some kind of catastrophic social fallout, because that's exactly what we're going to get, and that's exactly what feminism has produced. And Trump was mentioned, of course. It was suggested by Cohn that he admitted to sexually assaulting women in this article. He did not. He said they let you grab by the pussy. In other words, permission. Thank you.